Alright everyone, welcome to Friday's video as we get set for Celtic to kick off their Scottish Cup campaign tomorrow against Kilmarnock. We're going to be focusing on that game. I'll do my predicted 11. I've also been catching up with my good pal who's a Kilmarnock fan to find out more about them. So yeah, there's plenty happening, but we're going to start with some news. Now, first thing to tell you straight away is that Paul Tisdale, our head of football operations, is starting to get his scouting team together. And we've hired a relatively well-known football figure, I would say, in the shape of David Pleat. You'll likely know the name from the media, maybe 10, 15 years ago. Going back, he was a manager as well. I think he managed Tottenham Hotspur at the start of the century, a couple of caretaker spells there as well. I know him from a famous clip on the BBC where he bemoaned the lack of Scottish players getting opportunities in Scotland and brought up the Scottish player Jackson Irvine down south, who was doing well at Burton Albion, I think. And the one issue with that point he made was that Jackson Irvine isn't Scottish, of course. He's Australian. So that's how I know David Pleat, but you'll probably know him from various things. Anyway, he's back in football at the age of 80. He's landed a scouting role at Celtic that will see him focus on players playing in England. And he's signed on a 12-month deal, but he could obviously be at the club longer. He was most recently at Spurs. Left them at the end of last season. I believe they kind of removed them in order to focus more on numbers. Some would say woke nonsense, I don't know. But David Pleat certainly wasn't a fan of that, and he described himself as a football obsessive recently. So he's just turned 80 but still wants to continue in the game and clearly has a hell of a lot of experience as well. So I think this is a good appointment, credited with bringing the likes of Dele Alli, Jan Vertonghen and Ben Davies to Spurs. So it's been reported by the Daily Mail that David Pleat has landed a job at Celtic. So we're clearly going to be focusing on English stuff, continuing to do that. We kind of moved away from it for a little bit. I think while Brendan Rodgers is the manager, there's always going to be a tendency to look for players down south. So yeah, things are happening. David Pleat is in. Exciting stuff. In terms of actual transfer reports, a bit more chat about Louie Barry. He is the Aston Villa player, just recently recalled back to Villa after having a really prolific loan spell at Stockport County. 16 goals, I think he scored. I know I brought him up the other day and spoke about him being a striker, and a few of you were keen to point out that he's a left winger. Believe he can play both. Saw him compared to like Anthony Gordon, the Newcastle player, and that he maybe plays primarily off the left but can also play up front. Maybe a bit like Dyson Maeda as well in some ways. It's been reported again by the Daily Mail down south that we have bid for Barry, and it's said to have been a £5 million bid with a further £5 million in add-ons plus a buyback option for Villa. So, yeah, it doesn't really sound like Celtic a buyback option. I feel like we had that. This is a way out of the box shout. I feel like we had that with Mark Crozas years ago, that maybe when we signed him from Barcelona, they had an option to buy him back. Can't remember us ever offering anything like that in the past for another player. So, a little bit sceptical, and also kind of close to £10 million, including add-ons, seems a lot. But he's quite highly rated. French side Lens. Hopefully the pronunciation experts that were having a go at me yesterday for getting Valladolid wrong are happy with that. And yeah, Lens have bid for him, but Unai Emery, the Villa manager, seems adamant that Barry won't be sold this month. So yeah, I've watched him a little bit, and he does seem like he's a pretty exciting player, young guy, knows how to score goals, and he seems like the kind of player Celtic would be interested in. I guess the issue is that if Villa want to keep him, there's not really much we can do about that. Obviously, kind of interesting that we're playing Villa in a few weeks' time. Don't think he'd be eligible for that, would he? Because he'd need to be in the Champions League squad unless he's young enough that he could be in the B list. But yeah, that's one that's kind of ongoing. Yeah, I've got real doubts if we're going to sign Louie Barry, but it's certainly one that's got people talking. One that seems a bit closer to happening, it's actually a player leaving the club, is Alex Valle, and it seems increasingly likely that he might be departing this month. Now, there was a tweet yesterday from Fabrizio Romano, who has spoken about this in the last few days, but yesterday he tweeted saying, "Exclusive, Como are closing in on deal to sign Alex Valle from Barcelona, with Celtic to terminate loan with Tierney close to joining." Exclusive story from yesterday confirmed, as Como and Barca are set to seal on loan in the next days, almost there. So yeah, obviously if Valle is departing, and it talks there about Celtic terminating his loan, that would certainly suggest that Kieran Tierney's going to be coming in this month, and whether that's a loan deal for Tierney himself and then we sign him in a pre-contract in the summer, that does seem to be the way things are heading. As I said yesterday, having Tierney, Taylor and Valle all vying for that left back spot doesn't seem particularly likely. It doesn't seem like, again, a thing Celtic would do. So yeah, I think we can read a fair bit into this, that if Fabrizio Romano is talking about a move from Valle going to Como from Barcelona on loan being close, I think that tells us that Kieran Tierney coming to Celtic this month is pretty close as well. So yeah, we can probably assume that. And yeah, I mean, I just think getting Kieran Tierney in this month would be a huge boost. Like, nothing against Alex Valle. I think he's been fine. I think he's got potential as a footballer, and I'll be interested to see where his career goes. I've not been totally blown away by him, I don't think. There's maybe been the odd performance here or there. Kieran Tierney is clearly a huge upgrade on Alex Valle, so the squad would be stronger, and let's just hope Kieran Tierney can stay fit. But yeah, exciting stuff there. Moving away from transfer stuff, TV selections were announced yesterday for some upcoming league matches, both on Sky Sports and Premier Sports. Now, there were 4 here that concerned Celtic. So our trip to Hibs is now on Saturday, February 22nd, live on Premier Sports with a 12:30 kickoff. We've got a home game against Aberdeen Tuesday, February the 25th. So Tuesday night home game that will be shown on Sky Sports Live. That's an 8 p.m. kickoff. Our trip to St Mirren on Saturday, March the 1st will be shown on Sky Sports. That's got a 5:30 p.m. kickoff. Don't know if we've played that time. I think we have actually. We played St Johnstone away at that kickoff. But this one live on Sky. And finally, the third league derby of the season is set for Sunday, March the 16th. Live on Sky, of course, kick-off at 12:30. So yeah, 3 of those games in Sky Sports. The one against Hibs, just in around a month or so, interestingly, on Premier Sports. The game tomorrow on Premier Sports as well, it's Celtic versus Kilmarnock. 5:30 kick-off at Celtic Park, which is always pretty interesting. Again, don't know if we've had many 5:30 kick-offs. I remember a cup tie against St Mirren a few years ago that I think was a 5:30 kick-off, although I was out the country at that stage. Pretty sure it was. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a good one. And yeah, hopefully it's a match that can focus the minds of the Celtic players. You know, a cup game, there'll be a bit of an edge there against the team who ended our treble hopes last season. So late last night, I caught up with my good pal Callum, who's a Killie fan. So Callum, 9th in the league, Kilmarnock this season. What's your campaign been like?
Again, as it really says in the tin on it, I mean, it's been very, very up and down. Probably mostly downs, if I'm being honest. I think that I'm not totally got to blame Europe, but I think that's a massive factor. I think that we are playing catch up early doors in the season. I think that me and Monty that I do a podcast with, we're talking kind of hit the nail on the head. The only 2 really unacceptable or bad results we've had was Ross County at home just the other week when we get beat 1-0, and then St Johnstone at the beginning of the season when we get beat 3-0 in between the European games. Obviously, there are mitigating circumstances in that as well, but over the course of everything else, it's just been hard to find a bit of consistency. There's been a lot of positive signs in certain games, and then there's other games that we just don't look like ourselves. But again, obviously the red cards in that as well all season.
How many are we talking? Because I've heard people mentioning this.
I think I've lost count, man. I think it's 8. I think it's 7 in the league and 8 all in. So, it's horrendous. Really bad. But again, with the last few weeks, we've not had any, thankfully. So hopefully we've maybe turned the corner in that.
Okay. In terms of the cup, how are you feeling? Scottish Cup. You've been in a few good runs over the years, but it's kind of mainly been League Cup, hasn't it? So, what are you thinking about a potential cup run? I guess it's a tough draw.
Well, it's come on to the draw separately anyway, but I think that we've completely underachieved in the Scottish Cup. We've no been even to a semi-final since we won it in 1997. I think that we had a terrible cup record under Jeffries, and that's just kind of carried on. And we've had certainly a good few quarter-final appearances, namely kind of Aberdeen as well, that we've played a few times in the quarters, but they always seem to get the better of us, even under Steve Clark when McInnes was there. So it's something that we've really underachieved in. Again, not saying that Kilmarnock should be winning a cup or anything like that, but you know what I mean. But even getting to Hampden, once every 5 or 6 years really should be the kind of ambition. Under McInnes, we've tried to look a bit more and concentrate more on the Scottish Cup and League Cup. We obviously played you guys in the League Cup semi-final a few years ago, which was the first time we'd been at Hampden since we'd won the League Cup against you in 2012. But obviously the draw, it's literally the worst draw on paper. There's absolutely no doubt about that. It was so gutting and flat when you hear it. You always think, there's all these folk that, of course, you want any game at home that's winnable, but I would have loved Ayr or something like that, you know what I mean? Again, with a bit of meaning and purpose, or an away day to somewhere that you wouldn't ordinarily go, but to head up the M77, obviously 25 minutes up the road to Parkhead, where we've won once in 65 year or 70 year or something
Is
like
it?
that.
Wow.
Well, when we beat you in 2012,
Sheridan game.
the first time. It was the first we'd won there in 57, and we've
Right.
no won since. So again, if you listeners want to do the maths or whatever, because it's no my strong point. But so it's worst draw on paper, and I think that's reflected with the ticket sales. I don't know if you've seen yourself, obviously in my personal Facebook, I put up. It's just like, it's everybody's prerogative whether they want to go to the football or no. I can't have a go at MD if folk can't afford it, whatever, or if you just can't be bothered, that's actually all right. You really don't need to justify that. But I think that a lot of Kilmarnock supporters, they'll use every excuse in the book when it comes to Celtic, in particular, because see if the game was at Ibrox, and all part aside about any kind of alliance there or whatever, but if the game was at Ibrox, we played them midweek in December when we were rotten, and we taken 600 up in a Wednesday night when we were on a poor run of form, which I'd say is a pretty healthy crowd. We're struggling to sell 300 tickets for Saturday, man. It's and on the same day we sell at Tynecastle, which again you get a lower allocation at Tynecastle now. I think we have 595, 600 tickets, but we sold that out in a couple of hours, and we're struggling to kind of take anywhere 300 plus to Parkhead, which is really disappointing. And I think the fact of the matter is, folk can blame the big bad songs or the big bad poll in the away end or whatever, but it's not that. It's because our record up there's pitiful, and folk think we'll get beaten. That's why they don't like to go. Okay,
fair enough. We'll see how it goes. I was looking back to see when we last played you in the Scottish Cup. We've had a good few meetings in the League Cup. Several. You've beaten us a couple of times. 1-0, as you mentioned. When was the last time we played you in the Scottish Cup, though?
I'm thinking, was it maybe when Paul Caddis played with Celtic? No, the Robbie Keane one.
Yeah, Robbie Keane hat-trick, Rugby Park. Would Neil Lennon have been in charge, or was it still Tony Mowbray at that stage?
I think it was Lennon, man. But I'm not 100% sure. We were actually pretty good that day. Did you know score like a hat-trick in the last 15 minutes or something like that? I think we were.
I remember one of the goals was on his chest, and he took it round the goalkeeper, I'm sure, and scored. I think I remember the pitch being pretty poor that day. It was a grass pitch, but we don't need to go into all that this time because it's a game at Celtic Park. How are you feeling about the game? What's your hopes?
The hopes, obviously. It's beginning of every season. There's something inside me that thinks that Kelly can maybe go and win a league, but that's never going to happen. But I go into every game, man, and never expect, but hope that we can compete and see no reason why. No cliches and that are. If we want to go and win the cup, we need to beat Celtic anyway. That's really what it looks like. Or we'll just do what we did last year and do the whole country a favour by pitting you out and then us going out in the next run, which obviously happened in the League Cup. But I think that again, I think that over the course we've competed pretty well against Rangers and Celtic, minus kind of McInnes's first season when we were just up in when we got promoted. I mean, Ange, I think it was 9-0 in aggregate or whatever they won at Rugby Park. But again, we done all right at Hampden that year against us. I thought we played really, really well that day. We were unlucky. We played just a week before at Parkhead and we competed all right. It was a kind of nothing game, 2-0. And then last year we obviously went and got a point at Parkhead and actually played all right in the first game. But I think that, again, if we can go, the new signing, Calvin Ramsey, and that's hopefully giving folk a wee bit of a lift. I'm hoping that he kind of gets thrown straight in. But again, I couldn't tell you what I think the team will be, what the formation will be. McInnes tends to kind of change things a lot. So I mean that's been a thing, and we have missed a lot of players this year as well. I mean, Stuart Finlay, Matty Kennedy been injured, Kyle McGuinness as well, who's just coming back. They're arguably kind of 3 year better players. 3 year best players, and then you've got Kyle Vassell as well. Sometimes he's not that fashionable, but he causes teams problems. He likes to obviously get into a kind of physical battle and wrestle with folks. So I think if any club's kind of missing that amount of kind of key players, MD would struggle. But I think in recent weeks, even though it's only 1 point for 6 for the Ross County and Motherwell games, we played really, really well against Motherwell. It's a game that we should have won comfortably. And I'm just hoping that even with you guys playing midweek there in the Champions League game coming up next week, maybe having one eye in that. Doesn't matter though. I mean, you've got strength and depth all over the park. But again, you're just hoping that we can go and cause an upset. And as always, going to Parkhead and Ibrox, if you go and you just take it in 15-minute spells all the time, get through the first 15 minutes, just try and grow in confidence, and then try not concede goals at obviously right before half time and that, but it changes things, and just grow ourselves into the game. What we did last year against us, we went down 1-0, but we stayed in the game, and then we got a just reward with an equaliser, and we're actually unlucky not to nick it as well.
So yeah, not a great record for Kelly at Celtic Park, as Callum says, but in terms of us, while he's unhappy with the draw, and you can see why, it could certainly been an easier draw for us. A home game's always good, but when you think of all the teams in the Scottish Cup at this round, to get a Premiership team and one that finished in the top 6 last season, I guess is a kind of relatively tough draw, but clearly still big favourites for this game. I'm expecting to see a strong team named by the manager tomorrow. I know there may be a little bit of an eye on Wednesday night, and some people might talk about resting some players, and with it being the Cup, Sinizalo's name might come up. I do expect Brendan Rodgers to go strong. I think it's important that obviously we win tomorrow, that's the main thing, but I think putting in a good performance just to get everyone feeling good again ahead of Wednesday night is a pretty important thing. And I think you start strong and hopefully have the game won in an hour, and then you can bring players off and rest them a little bit. So yeah, going strong, some players potentially returning as well. We'll hear more from Brendan Rodgers later on Friday, but this is what I'm going with. Schmeichel in goal, back four of Johnston, Carter Vickers, Trusty, Taylor. Midfield, I'm going McGregor, McCowan, Engels, Kuhn on the right, Maida on the left, and Kyogo through the middle. So yeah, I've got Austin Trusty continuing. I do have my doubts whether Liam Scales might come in, given how scathing Brendan Rodgers was of Austin Trusty's performance. Labelled it soft on Wednesday night, but I would keep going with Trusty. I think just with the stuff going on with Valle, you go with Taylor for this game against his former club. For me, that's the best midfield at the moment. I'm really liking McCowan. I think Engels is playing well, and I know there's a bit of discussion about McGregor, but I think he starts the game. I just think Bernardo's potentially gone off it a little bit in recent weeks, and Hatate as well. And hopefully that's the front three we see back, because that is such a game changer for us if we can get those three on the pitch. In terms of the officials for the game, the referee is Nick Walsh, assisted by Graham Stewart and Callum Spence. VAR is, of course, in operation for this game. It will be VAR'd by Stephen McLean. Assistant VAR, Gary Hilland. And yeah, I mean, off air, Callum asked me, how am I feeling about this game? Do I see any hopes for Kelly? And yeah, I mean, I do feel that the fact it's a cup game will focus minds a little bit, and even I think the kick-off time should mean that Celtic Park is quite noisy. I think if it had been a 12:30 kickoff, it might just be a little bit subdued, and maybe if it's not a fast start, we might get some groans. I do think because people have had a little bit more time in the pubs, and I know not everyone drinks, a lot of people are doing dry January, etc. Stevie, for some daft reason. Good on you, Stevie. I do think, though, the atmosphere will be just increased that little bit because of the kick-off time, and everyone will be ready to go. And I do think, as I say, with it being the cup and having a bit of jeopardy there will be that edge for the Celtic players. So I think it'll be fine, getting through the main thing, but let's try and see a good performance as well. I will return on Sunday morning looking back at the game, everyone. Enjoy.